Hi, I'm Kara Powell from the Fuller Youth Institute, and Jake Mulder and I are so glad and honored to talk with you about our Growing Young research. Growing Young has changed so many churches, countless thousands of churches here in the United States. And we're so glad that you're also interested in learning from our research. And I pray that God will help you know how to contextualize it, to apply it in ways that make sense for you. So Jake Mulder and I, we want to respond to a couple of really common questions and wonderings when it comes to living out our Growing Young research, when it comes to helping churches not age or shrink, but do amazing work with 13 to 29-year-olds and to really thrive. So one of the major principles of Growing Young is that it's not just about developing a great youth ministry at your church, it's about the whole church community being involved in the lives of young people. And so you might be wondering, how did we discover this and why is it so important for your whole church, your whole congregation to really embrace the values of Growing Young? First, let me just say that it's absolutely important to have good youth ministry. There is something about being with people in your life stage and talking about issues really relevant to your life stage that's meaningful. I'm a mom with 3 kids who are 21, 19, and 16 years old. And I love being with other moms of teenagers and young adults because they just get me and what I'm going through. But one of my life mantras is that balance is something we swing through on our way to the other extreme. Balance is something we swing through on our way to that other extreme. And in our well-intentioned efforts to offer relevant programming for young people, we've often segregated them, and that's not a verb I use lightly. We've segregated them from the rest of the church. And so what we have seen in study after study, including in Growing Young, is it's not just about giving 15-year-olds or 25-year-olds a great ministry with people their own age. It's about seeing all of us, all generations, come together and be the church that God's intended. You know, I'm not Dutch, but I am Irish and Norwegian and German. So sorry that I'm not Dutch, but growing up, when my grandparents would have all of us over for a holiday, there were way too many of us to sit at one table. I'm the oldest of 18 cousins. There were way too many of us to sit at one table. So what my grandparents would do is they would create 2 tables, the adults table and the kids table. Now, the kids table was certainly fun, but it was fairly chaotic because there were no adults there. And sadly, that's what we often create in our churches. We have our adult worship, our adult discipleship, our adult formation, and then we have the same separately for young people. What we're saying is, how can we bring the 2 together? How can we help every young person have 5 adults who are investing them, 5 adults who are on their team? And just getting really personal with our 16-year-old Jessica, our youngest of our 3 kids. Largely because of the pandemic, she hasn't had the same adult contact that our older 2 kids had when they were teenagers. So we actually sat down, my husband and I sat down with Jessica this last weekend, and we talked to her about that. We said, you know, Jessica, we really want you to have 5 adults who are on your team. You have a small group leader, sure. You feel close to our youth pastor, absolutely, but you don't quite have the full team that we want you to have. What other adults would you like to get to know better? And so she named a few, and we'll be reaching out to those adults and seeing if they can grab a meal or take Jessica on a hike sometime this summer, because we want all of our kids, and I want every kid to have this team of 5 adults. It's just so important. Let me move to a second question. One of the things that I know is true in many countries, including the Netherlands, is that young people bring amazing vitality. And in fact, that was one of the biggest words we heard when we talked to pastors, is when they have young people around, it brings more vitality. But let me just say that your goal is not necessarily to get a lower age of the church. What is your goal? When it comes to being diverse, what is your goal? And, I think a lot of times we, as pastors, as leaders, we walk around, and at least here in the US, we feel bad if we're not diverse. And we wonder, well, how diverse is diverse enough? Whether that's race or ethnicity, whether that's gender, or whether that's age. And so here's our best advice. If you're wondering, when it comes to bringing the generations together, how diverse should we be? We want you to reflect your community, reflect your neighborhood. If you have a lot of older adults in your neighborhood, well, then your church is probably going to skew toward older adults, and that's okay. But if you have a lot of, let's say, 20 somethings in your neighborhood, then we hope your church reflects your neighborhood. And again, the same is true with socioeconomic status, with race and ethnicity, with education level. We think a healthy church reflects the neighborhood, reflects the community you're trying to minister to and with. So I just want to leave you with that question. When you look at your church, in what ways do you mirror your neighborhood or your community? And in what ways are you a little different? And how do you feel about those differences? And might you want to be more strategic in reaching out to those groups that are underrepresented? So again, I'm so excited about how God is working in and through you, and may God guide your steps as you grow young. Blessings.